Hey everyone, I'm writing this out because I still can't quite wrap my head around it all, and I feel like this is the only place where people might not think I'm crazy. My life got turned completely upside down in a single day, and it all started with me being a world-class idiot. I was stuck in the most mind-numbingly pointless board meeting of my career, watching the minutes tick by on the giant chrome clock on the wall. Each tick felt like a personal jab, a reminder that I was failing. I was supposed to be at my 7-year-old daughter Lily's first big ballet recital. I had promised her, pinky swore, and everything that I wouldn't miss it for the world. Yet there I was, nodding along to talk of quarterly projections while the most important event in my daughter's little world was happening without me. The meeting finally wrapped up, and the usual handshakes and fake smiles felt more hollow than ever. I practically sprinted out of that room, not even waiting for the elevator, and taking the stairs two at a time, fumbling for my phone. I called Isabella, our nanny, my heart pounding with a familiar mix of guilt and dread. I already knew the answer, but I had to ask. "It's over, isn't it?" Her voice on the other end was exactly what I deserved. Calm, professional, but I could hear the tightness in it. She never judged me, not out loud, but I knew she was the one who had to manage Lily's disappointment. She told me they were heading back, that Lily was okay, just quiet. That single word, quiet, hit me harder than any angry outburst ever could. I told her I'd meet them on their way back at a little park that was halfway between the city and our house. The entire drive there was a blur of self-loathing. I kept picturing Lily's face, probably looking for me in the crowd and seeing an empty seat. Since my wife passed, I'd poured everything I had into the company, telling myself it was for Lily's future, for her security. But who was I kidding? It was easier than facing my inability to be a father now that my wife wasn't there. Dealing with the silence, easier than trying to be two parents when I was barely succeeding at being one. Isabella had stepped in so seamlessly, becoming the stable, comforting presence Lily needed. She handled school runs, doctor's appointments, and bedtime stories. All the little moments that I was consistently missing. I was paying her to do a job, but she was giving my daughter a warmth I had forgotten how to provide. When I pulled into the park's quiet lot, I saw her car parked under a large oak tree. I got out, my pre-planned apology already feeling flimsy and pathetic on my tongue. I walked over to the passenger side to get Lily, expecting to have to unbuckle a sad, withdrawn kid, but what I saw stopped me dead in my tracks. The window was down a bit, and inside, Lily was sound asleep. She wasn't just in her seat. She was curled up completely in Isabella's arms, her head tucked right under Isabella's chin, her little ballet costume slightly crumpled. Isabella wasn't on her phone or looking around. She was just sitting there, holding my daughter, gently stroking her hair with such tenderness it took my breath away. It was a perfect, silent picture of pure comfort and trust, a picture I had no place in. I just stood there, hidden by the thick trunk of the tree, feeling like a complete intruder. It was like I was watching a movie of a life I was supposed to have. All my quarterly reports, my stock acquisitions, my victories in the boardroom, they all felt like dust in that moment. What had any of it gotten me? An empty seat at a recital? And the view of my daughter finding comfort in someone else's arms. I had built an empire of glass and steel, but the one thing that mattered, my tiny family, was being held together by the quiet strength of a woman I barely took the time to thank properly. It was a brutal, ice-cold epiphany. I wasn't providing for Lily. I was outsourcing her childhood. My first instinct was to tap on the glass and break the spell, to reclaim my role. But that felt wrong, like a hostile takeover of a sacred moment. So instead, I just walked back to my car and sat there, watching them. A decision began to form in my mind, not as a thought, but as a deep physical need. No more. This was the last day I would put my job before my daughter. I turned my work phone off, not on silent, but completely off. The silence that followed felt like the first clean breath I'd taken in years. Whatever fires were burning at the office could burn themselves out. Today, I was just going to be a father. I got out of my car again, this time with a sense of purpose, and walked over, gently tapping on Isabella's window. Isabella's eyes shot open, a little startled, but she relaxed when she saw it was me. She carefully, so carefully, shifted Lily's weight without waking her and rolled down the window. I didn't say what I had planned to say. The words, "I'm sorry," felt ridiculously small. Instead, I just looked at Lily's peaceful face and said, "Let's go home. All of us. In my car. We can get yours later. Just let her sleep." I think she saw something different in my eyes then. The usual frantic energy of the CEO on a tight schedule was gone. There was no apology, just a quiet request. She gave me a long, searching look, a little confused, but she simply nodded. Together, in near silence, we managed to transfer a still sound-asleep Lily into the backseat of my car, a maneuver that felt more important than any business merger I had ever negotiated. We pulled out of the park and onto the road, and for the first 10 minutes, there was this strange, peaceful quiet in the car. Isabella was in the passenger seat, occasionally glancing back at Lily, and I was just driving, feeling the weight of my decision to turn off my phone settle in a good way. For the first time, I wasn't mentally running through my next day's schedule. I was just there, in the car with the two most important people in my life. And then, of course, because life has a twisted sense of humor, the car started to sputter. The engine coughed once, twice, and then just died. I managed to coast to the shoulder of a deserted, tree-lined road. All the dashboard lights flashed at me in a mocking Christmas tree display. I just stared at the steering wheel in disbelief. The one day I try to get everything right, and this happens. My first thought was a string of curse words I wouldn't dare say out loud. I tried to restart the car, but the engine just made a pathetic clicking sound. Total silence. "Unbelievable," I muttered, hitting the steering wheel with the palm of my hand. A useless gesture of pure frustration. Isabella just said, "It's okay, Richard. These things happen." But I could see the look in her eyes as she scanned the empty road ahead and behind us. We were on a back road I sometimes took as a shortcut, and it was pretty isolated. The sun was getting lower, and the shadows from the dense trees were starting to stretch across the asphalt, making everything feel a little colder and more remote. I got out and popped the hood, staring at the engine like it was a foreign language, feeling my brief moment of parental competence evaporate completely. Just as I pulled out my personal phone to call for roadside assistance, a rusty-looking tow truck rumbled into view, pulling over right behind us. For a second, I was flooded with relief. What incredible timing! A man in greasy overalls hopped out, but as he got closer, my relief started to curdle into something else. There was something off about him. His overalls were dirty, but his hands were almost too clean, and he had this wide, fixed smile that didn't seem genuine at all. "Looks like you're in a spot of trouble there," he said, his voice a little too cheerful. Before I could even respond, Isabella had quietly opened her door a crack. "Richard," she said, her voice low and urgent, "get back in the car. Now." Her tone wasn't panicked. It was deadly serious, and it sent a chill right down my spine. Okay, I've made a lot of high-stakes decisions in my life, trusting my gut on nine-figure deals. But in that split second, I trusted Isabella's gut over my own without a second thought. The absolute ice-cold certainty in her voice was more convincing than any market analysis. I gave the man a weak, dismissive wave. "Just a second. Need to get my wallet," I said, backing away slowly before sliding back into the driver's seat. I hit the lock button, and the sound of the thump from all four doors locking at once seemed deafeningly loud in the quiet car. I glanced at the man through the windshield. For a fraction of a second, his smile vanished, replaced by a flash of pure predatory anger. It was gone as quickly as it appeared, but we both saw it. He was not a mechanic. "Pretend you are looking for your wallet, but get ready to start the car," Isabella whispered, her eyes fixed on the man who was now walking slowly towards my window. She had her phone in her lap, her thumb moving quickly across the screen. I didn't know if she was calling for help or recording, but she was doing something. The man reached my window and jiggled the handle. "Hey, buddy, no need for all that. Just let me help you out," he said, his voice losing its folksy charm and taking on a hard, demanding edge. My hands were shaking, but I did as Isabella said. I turned the key, expecting that same dead click. Instead, in what I can only describe as a miracle, the engine roared to life, loud and strong. I didn't wait for an invitation. I stomped on the gas and the car shot forward, leaving the man standing alone on the shoulder, his face a mask of shock and fury. I drove for at least 5 miles without saying a word, my knuckles white on the steering wheel, my heart feeling like it was trying to beat its way out of my chest. I kept checking my rearview mirror, fully expecting to see that rusty tow truck barreling down the road after us, but there was nothing. The road remained empty. The sudden jolt of the car had finally woken Lily up, who was sitting up in the back, rubbing her eyes. "Daddy, why did you go so fast?" she asked, her voice thick with sleep. Before I could even think of what to say, Isabella turned around in her seat, her expression completely soft again, as if the last 5 minutes hadn't happened. "The car just had a big hiccup, sweetie. Your daddy fixed it, and we were just excited to get home for dinner," she said, her voice impossibly calm and reassuring. She was a rock. I was shaking, and she was already rewriting the story to protect my daughter from it. When we finally pulled through the gates of my driveway, I felt a sense of relief so profound it almost made me dizzy. We were safe. Once we were inside, Isabella got Lily settled with a glass of juice and her favorite cartoon, completely shielding her from the tension still hanging in the air. I walked into the kitchen and just leaned against the counter, trying to get my breathing back to normal. The adrenaline was fading, leaving a shaky, cold dread in its place. Isabella came in a moment later, her face pale but composed. We just looked at each other for a long moment, the silence thick with what we had just been through. "He wasn't a mechanic, was he?" I finally managed to say, the question sounding stupidly obvious. "No," she said simply, her gaze unwavering. "He never even looked at the engine." We spent the next hour talking it through, the police having already been called and a report filed over the phone. They promised to patrol the area but weren't optimistic. To them, it was just a failed carjacking attempt, but it didn't sit right with me. The more I replayed it, the less sense it made. "They wanted us out of the car," I said, pacing the length of the kitchen. "He didn't demand my wallet, he didn't have a weapon out, he just wanted us to get out of the car. And the car itself, it felt less like it broke down and more like it was switched off." I stopped pacing and looked at Isabella. "That sounds crazy, right? Like something from a spy movie." She just shook her head slowly, her expression thoughtful. "I don't think it sounds crazy at all, Richard. I think you're right." Her validation sent a new wave of chills through me. If it wasn't random, then it was targeted. And if it was targeted, who? Who would hate me enough to do this, to terrorize my family? My mind cycled through business rivals and disgruntled ex-employees, but none of it felt right. And then a name I hadn't allowed myself to think of in years surfaced like a monster from the deep. Daniel. My own brother. I hadn't seen him since I had to force him out of the company for nearly bankrupting us with his gambling debts. The last I'd heard, he was drowning in debt,
and blaming me for all of it. The thought was sickening, so vile I almost dismissed it, but the pieces fit with a terrifying click. This wasn't about a random score, this was about making me look like I couldn't protect my own daughter. It was an attack on my stability, my reputation. I finally looked at Isabella, the full weight of it all pressing down on me, and I told her everything. I explained about Daniel, the bad blood, the bitterness. I laid out the whole ugly story, expecting her to look at me like I was the head of some cursed, dramatic dynasty. But she didn't. She just listened, her expression never changing from one of deep, unwavering empathy. When I was finished, there was a long silence. All she said was, "I am so, so sorry you have to carry that, Richard." She didn't offer advice or platitudes. She just sat with me in the ugliness of it. And in that moment, I felt less alone than I have in the last 3 years. She wasn't just my daughter's nanny, she was my anchor. And as I sat there, a truly horrible thought dawned on me. Daniel's plan, as monstrous as it was only possible because it was built
On a kernel of truth. It was designed to expose a weakness that was already there. I was an absentee father. I was letting my work consume me to the point of dereliction. His goal was to make me look like I couldn't handle my own life. And the terrible truth is I was already proving him right by missing that recital. The attack on the road wasn't the beginning of the problem. It was just the vicious, terrifying culmination of my own failures. My brother wanted to show the world I was falling apart, and he almost didn't have to do a thing to prove it. That's when everything finally snapped into focus. All the events of the day aligned in my head. The hollow feeling in the boardroom, the gut punch of seeing Lily in Isabella's arms, the sheer terror on that deserted road, and now the sickening revelation about my own brother. It was all a violent, screaming signpost pointing me in one direction. My life of frantic, lonely work was over. It had to be. I looked at Isabella, this incredible woman who had shown more courage and grace in one afternoon than I had in years, and then I glanced towards the living room, where the sound of Lily's quiet laughter was the only thing that mattered in the entire world. I knew, with a certainty that dwarfed any business decision I'd ever made, what I had to do. So that's the story. My security team is handling the Daniel situation now. It's a quiet, ugly mess, but it's being managed. That part, however, feels like a footnote. The real story is what happened to me, to us. The other night, I came home from leaving the office at a reasonable hour and found Isabella and Lily in the backyard having a water fight with the garden hose, their laughter echoing in the evening air. I didn't hesitate. I just dropped my briefcase and ran right into the spray. My brother orchestrated a perfect storm to destroy me, but he failed. He didn't realize I had a secret weapon all along, a 7-year-old in a ballet costume and her nanny who showed me that the family I had been neglecting was the only thing worth fighting for. That horrible day didn't break me. It broke me open.